Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another EMA virtual, and now I'm also having to do multitasking, another EMA knowledge exchange. Today, we want to talk about the wave of change from, the virtual event to the hybrid event. And I want to encourage people to get involved in the discussion. We've got a couple of little bits I'm going to share through, but it's becoming clearer that COVID-19, unfortunately, is here for the foreseeable future. In March, there was a massive rush to cancel, to postpone event activities, quickly followed by a new pandemic, Zoom meetings. And here we are in the middle of one. Everything moved to online. And whilst this has filled an immediate need over the last 6 months, and these are my views, there's been a lot to learn and a great deal of catching up. And in a nutshell, we're now talking about Zoom fatigue. And a lot of people are zooming out. I was guilty yesterday. I attended a meeting. It got to a point that I thought, this is so flat. Whilst I'm sure the content was good, it was feeling flat. I zoomed out, hid myself, went and made a cup of coffee, came back, felt the same, and then clicked out. So I think we've got a lot to do, and how we can change that. So I think our next challenge is, how do we evolve what we do, make things more engaging, more entertaining, more value to both our businesses and to the participants. So I'll put it out there that, to me, TV production hybrid is the next stage. Is the next wave of innovation we all need to be looking at. A couple of weeks ago, we did our first EMA hybrid event from the Royal Lancaster Hotel in their new XR studio, extended reality. And hope you joined it as live, or if you've watched the video afterwards, you can see both how wonderful it was, and how great it was, but also how disjointed we were. Personally, I feel like I was as a presenter, bumbling my way through a bit like I'm doing now. But the hotel and venues that are investing in technology, London Convention Bureau have been working with many of the venues to find out what they're doing, how can they improve, giving some advice. And before we start our little session, Paul Black, who's head of business events at London Convention Bureau, is going to give us a quick overview of the venues in London now who are already adapting to be able to deliver hybrid and investing in this tech. London Convention Bureau will be sharing with us in the next few days a document on these venues, and also a video that they're doing, and I'll share this on EMA's website. So Paul, can you give us a quick overview of some of the venues, the people that you're working with who are doing what?
Sure. Thanks, Richard, and good morning, everyone. Great to see you. I think really, as Richard said, it was a big learning experience the other week, and it is absolutely terrifying. I have to say, it's very different speaking to perhaps a group in a sort of with a standard kind of presentation to then have cameras and multiple cameras. So it's definitely a very different experience. That was definitely a big learning curve for myself. But in terms of London Convention Bureau, as Richard said, we're working with all different types of venues and hotels, just to seeing, where they can, how they're adapting, and particularly with what investment they're making with technology in terms of either creating dedicated kind of plug and play studios, or whether they're sort of really enhance their partnership with their production companies or indeed event agencies to develop sort of hybrid packages. And I think, it really depends, the level of how deep you go with a hybrid event depends on what type of event you're doing, whether it's a webcast, whether it's a webinar like this, or whether it's a video conference. And the pricing implications that we see across what all our partners are doing it really comes down to what the quality of their streaming services available is, the number of cameras that you use at your event. So for example, at the Royal Lancaster, Richard, I believe we had at least 3 cameras. So again, that was a trick, wasn't it? Just trying to remember which one to look at and have that skill. There's also obviously customized backdrops, which again we employed at the Royal Lancaster with their extended reality screen. You have personalized streaming interfaces, so that obviously has a cost implication. And then also the ability to edit sort of that video. So, you know, a lot of our venues have created sort of tends to be 3 to 4 different types of packages based on what those cost dependencies are and what sort of influence the price. So I guess those are the key variables to sort of, or top level variables to sort of look at when speaking to them and deciding if that package works for your company. But, you know, like I say, across London, we've been working, you know, seeing what venues are adapting, because it's really important, I think, to say that, you know, as it stands, we're still allowed to do meetings of 30 and under. So that very much brings this to the fore right now. So you could do a hybrid event. There are strong sort of studios which are, like I say, plug and play, ready to go. So in terms of sort of good options at the moment and different types of venues that we've seen, there's the conference venues that you'd expect. So ETC, which I'm sure you're aware of, they've developed some great hybrid packages, and they're working in partnership with the Glissa platform. So what that helps means straight away is that you have that online platform in which to pull across straight away, and you have that sort of combined expertise in-house. So ETC are doing a fantastic job for this. CCT venues in London, so they have 4 venues across London. They have some really good, strong hybrid packages, which again dictated to by the numbers, the cameras, you know, and they've got a really good small studio in their Barbican property. So it's a huge screen, HD screen, and it's one of these venues where you could literally have 2 people and then broadcast out to everyone alongside the other meeting spaces. So do check that out. In terms of hotels, I definitely think Royal Lancaster have done an amazing job with this in terms of the screen they've created. They made a huge investment. It's been incredibly brave, given it's been such a tough world for them this year. But you know, they worked hand in hand with their production company to deliver a really fantastic screen. And then another great hotel that's done good work is St Ermins. So they've got a dedicated green stage in-house, which is again ready to go. So again, you can sort of, depending which platform you're using, you know, whether it's a standard platform like a Zoom and Teams, or if it's, you know, an encrypted platform, you know, they can work whichever platform is your preference, depending on what type of event and how many people you're broadcasting out to. So yeah, in terms of hotels, I would definitely say St Ermins and Royal Lancaster have led the way. But again, it's really important to say that every hotel will have to do this, because they'll be working alongside in partnership with their production companies, you know, to really up their streaming, most importantly, in order to, you know, broadcast the live or recorded events out to large audiences. Tobacco Dock, in terms of like a plug and play setting, is fantastic. They've got 2 brilliant studios. I went there a couple of weeks ago, and it has really top of the range kit and in-house expertise. So if you get the chance, look at that. Excel have just launched their new studio, which again is a plug and play studio, again working partnership with their production company. So that's ready to go. As QE2 mentioned at the event we did with a couple of weeks ago, they've got some great packages, and again very immersed of using sort of technology and broadcasting. And I'd also add Church House Westminster to that. They have fantastic facilities, and they're doing some really compelling offers right now for hybrid events. One of the best venues I have to say I've seen, which you'd expect, is IED Savoy Place, so the Institute of Engineering Technology. Their event space is brilliant, and they have really strong in-house expertise, whether it's a live streaming production company in-house, or whether it's a webcasting company sort of in-house. So, you know, and I think the big take home for me from trying to learn all this, like many people, but seeing what different venues are really doing, is they have the in-house expertise to support you. So one of the activities we did alongside EMA was also with Neil from Delegate Wranglers, where we toured 5 venues around London, and we did a Q&A with each of the venue managers in terms of sort of top tips, but also just how it works. And that video's been released today in about an hour and a bit. So I'll send that to Richard to circulate. It's about 20 minutes long. You have to excuse a couple of the dodgy presenters that are on there, but some of the information from the venues is great, and it gives you a good sort of visual in terms of what the look and feel is, and it really, like I say, underlines that bit where, you have the in-house expertise, whether it's the actual venue people or it's the production company or it's the AV expert, to sort of take you on that journey. And they will listen to say, right, okay, what are your key parameters? You know, is it a webcast? So, you know, it's a large audience, but it's, you know, minimal interaction. You know, it's on-site speakers, or if it's a webinar, it's much smaller with interaction available, and they will help sort of go through that process. So for me, that's the biggest take home in all of this. As Richard mentioned, we're getting the document up together. It keeps changing, which is why we sort of delayed it a bit. So I think hopefully by the end of next week, it will be done. But in the meantime, I'm sending Richard the whole list of which ones I've seen and which I've heard straight away now. So you have that available. But cool. I would say there's a good around 20 venues that have really done a good job throughout this. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Paul. It's really interesting and helpful. And I think as members, you know, as we share our intel, we'll get that list up, we'll put it on the website and share it with members. But also as members start using places, find out places, if there's something missing from that list, you know, we can add to that to let each other know. But I think this whole process now of moving forward, and the plug and play thing is the important aspect, because it brings down the cost. You know, as we sat at the Royal Lancaster the other week, you know, they talked about over £1 million worth of investment to make that available. I think signing over the space was a big investment on their part. But there was, without question, there was over 150 grand's worth of tech behind the scenes, and had taken days to set up and everything else. So with that being there and being available and having a price that you can go in and rent it for the day, and maybe 2 or 3 days, a lot cheaper than, you know, having to build from scratch. So highly recommend. So Paul, thanks ever so much for that. And now I'll move on to my learnings from hybrid and share some of those thoughts from that event. But as I said, I do want to open this up as a discussion and shared learning with everybody. So, you know, use the chat box or come in live as we go through this, sharing your thoughts and notes, and etc. So basically, as I said, I prepared my notes, my talking notes, my bullet points, as I would normally do for hosting an event. I'm very much in my style an ad-libber, and to get a feel of the room, find out what's going on, bullets, everything else. I had prepared my bullets, but I'd not prepared a script. And I have to say, they're very different things. Presenting a hybrid is very different to presenting live or virtual. You have to be thinking of engaging with both your live audience. We had 20 people, I think, in the room. The cameras, and as Paul said, we had 3 cameras, so they go from, you know, red, so the idea of which one you're looking into and everything. And your panelists and the audience watching through the camera lens. It was quite a lot to juggle in your head. And that, you know, we were in a TV studio. The guys from CNN who were there doing those interviews and recording it, the minute the producer walked in, he said, "Oh my God, this is a TV studio. You're going to be competing with us." And it's extremely daunting. Speakers need coaching. They need training. A professional anchor, I'd say, is worth their weight in gold, and at least a professional TV producer who can support you and your speakers in presenting and building the engagement and narrative flow. It's just a whole different experience, and I can't emphasize that enough. And I know you're going to be talking to executives who are going to be doing these presentations, and they think it's just going to be the same as what it normally was. Well, it's not. And if they want to be really come across well and be impactful, then having some training is well worth the investment, as well as you as event professionals getting training and understanding in what this is. You know, the studio style presentation is really important, and not being totally reliant on your event production teams. And I will say also, you've got to make sure that your event production companies that you would normally use have brought in specialists who are used to TV production and not just the normal stage and set production, because I said it's really different. Things you need to be conscious of, help education with our speakers, is the wonderful earpiece. We've seen a number of people in the news pulling them out and going crazy because someone's talking too much in their ear whilst they're still trying to talk. But we need to be conscious of this. It's there to give you prompts from the producer to give the speakers advice, what's coming up next, etc., or if there's a problem coming down the road because it's live. But they're a nightmare. Auto cue, sorry, paramount for script or prompts. I wish I'd had it the other week. I didn't. They told me afterwards that they could have made it available. Slight communication thing there. But I think auto prompt is really important because it helps you look at the audience and not look at your notes, which I was trying to do all the time. And you can use that as a total written out script, or you can use it for prompts and everything else. But I definitely think using auto cue, having that there so that you can focus on the cameras and other people, the audience, etc., is really important. Presentation monitors, so you can see what the audiences are seeing and what the next slides are, not your notes, presentations, videos, live feed. One of the main reasons for that is because some of the things you might be doing is 3D holograms. So what the green screen, the XR, other AI augmented presentation studios allow you to do, as you've seen on TV, on the news and everything, is to have 3D presentations presented. But of course, to the presenter, they're not there. All right. So even though when they're doing this, shaping the globe, pointing at slides, pointing something out, it's not physically there on the room for them. So they've got to be looking at a slide opposite them and presenting this fictitious presentation to their left or to their right. But again, they bring the room alive. It's not a flat presentation screen. So I think they're really important, really, really exciting, really interesting to use. 3D holograms for presentation slides. Sorry to talk about that. Live speakers being beamed in. So I think what we're seeing a lot at the moment is one presenter being in maybe one of these virtual studio rooms and then talking to slates, screens of presenters coming in from the outside. That's how we're currently beaming them in. But you can go a stage further than that, and you can beam people physically into the room. And what I mean that, I don't know if people saw some of the Roland Garros tennis. Again, you see it on the news all the time, but Roland Garros tennis, being a tennis fan, watched a bit of that. But at the end of each game, there were reviews by the professionals. I can't remember her name now, who was anchoring it for ITV, but she was in a studio at the tennis. But then there were 2 or 3 other presenters who were brought in. Tim Henry was brought in many times, but Tim wasn't in that studio. He was in another studio in London. What we had watched it on television. In fact, he had a studio put into his house, watched it on television, and then joined the presentation. So he was a hologram on the TV, but it looked so real. It was great. So that's a great way of bringing other executives into a meeting to have a discussion, to be part of a panel, but not just present, be on a slate or a screen within the backdrop and the presentation in that area. The other thing, dress, styling, makeup, it becomes a lot more important when you're starting to develop TV presentations than it does from people just going on stage and being part of the studio. I noticed looking back on mine that the old shiny head syndrome was very prevalent. So I could have, had a bit of makeup slapped on there, but well worth, thinking of that, helping presenters. They don't like it. I've had that many a time, but it's good. Integrating pre-recorded segments, very important. So again, this whole professional mix of live, pre-recorded is going to be the way forward, and making it interactive. with a lot with live segments, audience in room, bringing things in from outside, how we look at that and how we make those happen. So things like, we watch the news, and this is what I've been doing recently. I'm watching the news. I'm looking at debates on TV. I'm looking at things that like question time. So these are live events, not the pre-recorded where you can stop, edit, go back, but these live events, and thinking about, okay, how are they doing? Because these are the guys that have been doing this for years. And I think this is where businesses need to be taking some inspiration and insight from. Okay, how can we do this to engage our audiences and make this like real, really memorable and engaging. Than the flat screens. So key things about audience engagement and involvement: breakout rooms, groupings. How can we do those? How can we interact those? Engagement with other technologies. So the beauty is with technology is many different technologies can integrate with one another. So I can sort of say, your standard presentation platform, but then the platforms that you use within that, from voting, from sharing, from dropping in 3D, for networking, for sponsorship, sponsor activation. It's looking at all these different things that are available. The other thing is timing. I think length of sessions. Now, I think the hybrid is going to be interesting, because we are now going to be having, if we go from virtual, we've been able to keep things maybe in 1-2 hour sessions, which again, to a certain extent, are too long. But the other thing is that being a hybrid, you're probably going to say, right, okay, we've got a day-long conference, or it could even be a day-and-a-half conference, because we have this. We're going to expect people to come in and come out and drop in, sit there at a screen all day watching this. How is that going to work? I don't have an answer. And throw that one out there. But I think if you're asking people to join a hybrid conference for the day, we're going to expect them to be dropping in and dropping out of that, the important sessions. I think one of the key parts for that, if anything, is then post-event releases, post-event marketing of your event. That's where you get greater distancing or greater extent and depth of what you're trying to communicate. And that can be, yes, you put your whole conference up wherever you want to keep it. I'm sure it's going to be behind a lot of them behind a wall. But people can interact and interject with that at their pleasure. They can come and see times. But the other thing is, when I talk about marketing, is sending out like segments saying, oh, did you see this? Did you see that? And getting people to come and spend 45 minutes viewing one segment. So it prolongs the life of the conference, prolongs the life of the communication. And I think that can be done if it's public stuff. It can be done through social media and everything. If it's going to be password protected and behind the wall, that again can go out to that community. So those are some of my thoughts. I really wanted to sort of open that up and hear if anyone's got any thoughts or experiences that they want to interject with. Sorry, I hadn't seen the chat live as I was busy talking. But guys, please, anybody want to open up their screen or come on in with some of that? Paul, you're still there. You experienced as much as I did that first shock of that being live and being in that studio.
Yeah, well, I think you did great as well. And I think one of the bits that some of the venues have all said to us as well is, and this is perhaps one thing we didn't do, but I think it was difficult, wasn't it? Because we didn't know whether it would go ahead with everything happening. But was to absolutely plan time for rehearsal and make sure all the speakers have rehearsed and they, and it's just so that there's no surprises on the actual kind of flow of the event. Which there wasn't really with what we did at Royal Lancaster, but it certainly hit home to me, is that make sure you plan that time for rehearsal. And it seems very obvious to say, but I think that some may have some commercial implications as well, when you're booking a space, as well as the length of duration, which again, the venues will work with you on. But it's very different, and it surprised me a lot how different it really was, So But I think also it's quite daunting because it is a huge screen there as well. So then it really hits home. But I think everything you said is absolutely correct. And I think I think what Mark's saying as well in chat, I think the short sessions definitely keep people's concentration, because I think that is a much less than it is for a live event. And I guess it is one of the big challenges how you engage the virtual visitors with the live visitors. And I think if you were to say what the biggest challenge is with organizing these hybrid events, is exactly that, how someone in North America can sort of converse with someone attending a live event at Tobacco Dock. So there's certainly learning curves are, but definitely for me the rehearsal bit is really important.
Yeah, thanks. Mark, can I drag you in, Mr. Gill? How are you thinking about or approaching, or have you started yet, the hybrid strategy?
No, it's going to be a challenge, I think, and we're finding that we're having to obviously follow the government advice, and we're not trying to kind of loop around that at all. I think we've kind of accepted that virtual is there for a while. We do find that it's the networking piece which just doesn't seem to work that well for our clients and for our hosts. And I think we're kind of pushing it back. I think we've sort of got to a point now where we've been doing kind of virtual for a few months now, and we started doing it obviously as soon as we went into this in March. And now I think you've got to try and look and say, okay, if this is going to drag through 2021, which I think our kind of feeling is hearing from our kind of senior leadership, we have a whole kind of wellness team that kind of will not sign off on doing anything which has got a kind of live interaction unless they're kind of super comfortable and they can see that there really is no risk at all. So that's the point, I think, for us, where it could be kind of middle of 2021 before we can really see that that we can start doing anything with kind of in person, which is a shame, because there's a big kind of push from the business to get back to live, but it's just, I think it's a combination of not having that kind of sign off from the government, and also I think a lot of people do have this kind of like, oh, once there's a vaccine it will save everything, whereas I'm kind of a bit more like, really, I think you probably need to find a way to work with the challenges rather than kind of waiting for the vaccine.
Yeah, but isn't that, because I also remember you said last week that you had a number of execs who are really keen to get back to live and to be able to get together with industry colleagues, network, as well as present. And I think the hybrid is the answer to that. When we were at the Royal Lanc the other week, the GM there, Sally Beck, mentioned that, she mentioned it, so it was out there, that BP had held a 4-day event there, which was their board, I believe their board, global board or international board meeting, and that they had smaller meetings going on around this. There's only like 20 people in the room for the meeting, and they basically stitched together a program of meetings over these 4 days, stuff that was happening live or semi-live with the hybrid, and then other stuff that was happening just purely as a meeting. But at one point they had a session, so I'm going to set presumably it's up to their sort of global executive committee or people around the world, but there were 1,400 people on the call at one point. So they integrated a live necessity. We all know that our senior execs need to get together to discuss big strategy and have some meetings. So they kind of integrated these meetings, and I can see those being the way forward. Yes, we're not going to have rooms of 300 or 400 people for the foreseeable future. I know there's a big push. We've released it today about one industry, one voice, but it's going to take time for us to be able to do big live events and meetings, and I think that is going to be end of spring, summer next year, once we hopefully see the sort of the COVID dropping off again, in reality, which is very sad, but we do need to move it on to the next level, which is an integration of hybrid. Has anybody else got any thoughts on that? I'm going to see. Please, anybody wants to jump in on that. Anna, I know the stuff that you've been talking about, stuff that you're doing at Liberty, and very keen to come back to live.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, virtual's gone through the roof. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, virtual's gone through the roof. So we've got about 35 events between now and Christmas. And that's just the Liberty side. The VM team, last I heard, they're at about 40 to 45 events between now and Christmas. So I'm still very keen to either do a hybrid or just something smaller external. I think we need to gain the confidence back from people for smaller numbers. But certainly the O2, I think I mentioned on a previous call, the O2 Arena is opening up on the 5th of December for a smaller capacity. And that's for 4,600 people they're going to have in the arena for Squeeze. Now the suites, because we're a suite holder, you're only allowed 6 there because current guidelines are 6 indoors. But that's certainly where I am in Kent, that's still allowed, but in London that's not. So I don't know how they're going to get around that now. But that'll be really interesting to see when that opens up, because that's really a proper live event. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But I think everyone is going to get anxious, or is already getting anxious and having camera fatigue. So the virtual stuff, you can't do anything longer than 90 minutes because people are just going to get burnt out, as Mark has already said. So we're just capturing it in bite-sized chunks at the moment, which is probably why there seems to be a lot of virtual events, because they're 90 minutes each, and that might have been a one whole day before. So that equates to sort of 4 events now rather than doing one whole day, because you simply can't do one whole day now.
What about speaker training? Elizabeth, I can see you're on the screen. Or Claire, you know, have you been working with your execs in presentation skills and coaching? Are they open for it?
Yeah, Richard, we train our speakers before every webinar and event we do, actually. We have a deck, a very simple deck, and it's just the most basic stuff, like you should be presenting yourself the same as you would on a stage. Just because you're on a webinar or a virtual event and you're sat in your kitchen potentially, doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't approach it exactly the same as you would approach it as if you're on a stage. So have a glass of water next to you, make sure you're presentable. Go to the loo before the session starts. This is all fundamental stuff, but stuff we've been caught out on. So we have prepared a speaker deck, which we share, and then before every session we do a 30-minute technical run through of, is your camera in the right place? Is your lighting okay? Have you turned off all your other devices so that your connection's not going to drop? Camera positioning in terms of, are you making eye contact with the audience? Because obviously looking into the screen and making eye contact is completely different depending on where your camera is on your laptop. So yeah, we've invested quite a lot of time actually in working with our speakers just to make sure that the output is as professional as it can be. It's not brilliant if you're using Zoom all the time, but at least it's better than it could be if people just sort of sat in their kitchen leaning back in their chair.
Okay, Elizabeth, did you want to come in there? Hi.
Sure. Hi.
Getting colder in Spain. The jump is on.
I know. No, it is. It's actually, but it's beautiful. It's sunny and cold. Cold for us, at least. Anyway, we're not doing anything that's too sophisticated in terms of prepping the speakers, and we always do a prep call with them. We always guide them, as to what to wear, muted colors. You have nice lighting in the back. We try and, just like what she was saying, we try and work with them to make sure that their technology. Oh, did I just disappear?
No, you're there.
Oh, okay. On my end,
I think it's
my monitor is going crazy. Their technology is working. Everything is fine. We do a run through. Our webinars and our discussion groups are quite informal. So we are about to do something in this month, actually, which is going to be much grander and much liver. It's with iVent. and we're replicating literally the hotel that we were supposed to be hosting it in. So it's going to be, a much grander sort of 3-day conference, and it's our first to do this. So it'll be quite interesting to see how this is pulled off. But with that particular event, we probably will get a little bit more sophisticated with the speakers and as to what kind of guidance we'll be giving them.
Okay, we look forward to reviewing that and questioning you.
I know, exactly,
afterwards.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think the first ones are always going to be the hardest, aren't they? Because then you go through it and you learn, like I sort of say,
Exactly.
learned quite a bit from the other week in the preparation. Does anybody else want to come in with some comments? Christopher, I know you've been doing quite a lot of online engagement with your execs in your community.
Yeah, so it's really very much the same as Mark, really. So we're doing, and Anna, we're doing a lot of online stuff. We're taking it seriously with the government guidelines. We're not trying to get around doing anything and moving it forward to live at all. The only thing I would say, my comments about the hybrid versions going forward, is with things like the networking parts afterwards, because of the social distancing currently. I do think we all need to do some work in what we can do to make those environments not just only safe, but just feel comfortable when they're in there as well, and not so clinical. So I think there'll be things about dressing room. I think there'll be things about music in the background. I think there'll be things about what we actually do to make spaces feel more comfortable and not so clinical with the space and the distancing between everybody. So that could be more expense somewhere, or it could be some sort of simple things. That's probably the things that I've pulled out most from what a hybrid event will be like.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that I'm hearing there's a little bit more, we're not either not resistance, but apprehension towards moving to hybrid at the moment. Then I have to be honest, than what I thought. I had the feeling that the businesses were going to be keen to move to this Q1, Q2, Q2 next year. And if that was the case, then planning would be in place. Am I right in saying that, or is it just that we're not at that point yet? Anybody got any comments there?
I'd say not at that point yet. For me, it still feels like things are so much up in the air that even Q2 next year, with the lead times that we need to do of anything of any scale, does feel early. So unless there is any sort of drastic changes really, really quickly, for me, it feels more like Q3 next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably in the same boat. We were actually planning on doing some things starting in February, and that's now all changing, sadly enough. I still have my fingers crossed for March. We're doing something that will be a little bit more local, and we purposely did it. It's our CEO conference that we're doing, which we moved to London, knowing that a lot of our attendees will be, well, it's outside, it's at Hampshire, Four Seasons Hampshire, knowing a lot of our attendees are coming from London. We still have not canceled that yet. We have a deadline of until December. So we're kind of waiting. I think everyone is just waiting. Nobody really knows and has the answers at this point. We just want to monitor what goes on over the next few months to see if we will have to end up canceling March, April, May, and move everything into June, July. It's a repeat basically of what happened last year.
Yeah, I get it. Nikki, I saw you unmute there. Were you going to say something? Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's I think with some of it, it's more the unknown, I think. And I think with hybrid, you're trying to make sure that everyone that's there is having a good experience, everyone remotely is having a good experience. And I think because that's something we've not done before, I think we're certainly going to probably find some challenges. But then I think we also thought that doing events virtually would be quite challenging, and now it just seems very much the norm. So I'm sure we'll adapt.
We'll get there. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think what businesses are, and again, some conversations that we've been having previously to this one, is that the business is now recognizing the importance of live and the importance of getting together. yes, we're being able to communicate through the virtual and engage and share information, everything else. But I do question, how productive those events are compared to a live event. And so that people want to get, we're human, we want to get back together, we want to talk, we want those sidebar conversations. And that's the thing that, we miss is the networking, is the conversations. And it's those business conversations around an event that take businesses forward and drive productivity. So yeah, it's just interesting. I think we've got to start this conversation, start thinking, and perhaps what I'm taking as well from this is we need to bring more learning to the table from industry professionals about, okay, what, the challenges around a hybrid, the ways to adapt that, the ways to promote those to your business. And I do say sort of, small meetings, but with broader audiences, are the way forward. Start of next year, or into quarter two probably next year. Get the winter months behind us, but now is the time we need to start preparing for those. Like you were saying, Elizabeth, having something penciled in for February. Still got to make that decision, but we've got to start planning towards those. Otherwise, we'll never kick this and get on with live.
Yeah, it's very true, Richard. Very true. And I think we're going to have to, there's got to be a leap of faith at some point, isn't there? But we're all just kind of hanging on by our fingertips at the moment, just waiting for an update and just seeing where we can move forward. It all depends on local lockdowns and stuff as well. London is very different to what's happening in the south, which, have a few more, it's not as strict. So what we can do is wait.
I think this my closing gambit on this is the decision about being reactive or proactive. And in our roles, we've got to think about, okay, are we reactive? Are we waiting for the company to say, right, guys, we want to do a hybrid event, we want to do this? Or are we being proactive in saying, look, these are our options, this is what we can do, these are the challenges. And these are our get out clauses if things get worse, but the value to the business is far greater if we're doing a hybrid live event than just purely webinar based stuff.
Richard, I'm in agreement with you 100%, and that's exactly how I feel. I feel like we need to get out there and start building some confidence and showing them that it's actually okay. We can make things happen. We can execute a hybrid event and do things that are on site that will make you feel safe and comfortable, and at least just give them that confidence back, because I would say majority of our members are really anxious and are ready to get back. But then you have that other group, that are feeling a little bit hesitant and uncomfortable about going somewhere live or having to get on a plane or even just being with a group. So that's why the hybrid event addresses that whole situation.
Yeah.
It addresses both those who are ready to get back and those who aren't.
Yeah, and I think from our point, I mean, I had no questions or no concerns about the hospitality and cleanliness and how I felt once I was at the Royal Lancaster Hotel the other week. It was exceptional. They did an amazing job, and it felt totally happy and secure. Anything else, my concern, if anything, was, and the train wasn't a problem, but the sort of 30 minutes I spent on the tube was a bit nerve-wracking. But again, it was fine. I think the other big challenge is that we as the event professionals we're starting to, again, we've been in the unknown with the virtual stuff, which has been quite daunting. We're now just probably you're probably still drowning in it all or catching a breath in delivering virtual. And now we're saying, right, guys, here's the next bucket of doodah coming. And it's starting to develop and manage the hybrid event. And so that's a challenge. So again, it's easier to stay with the in the comfort zone of, okay, we can develop, we now know how to get our hands and arms around virtual, but this sort of combination of live and virtual is, to me, is the way that the businesses need to be going forward and engaging. I'm not talking about tomorrow. I am talking about 3-6 months down the road. But of course, now is the time we need to be starting to think about it and discuss it, and then start to plan towards it. So on that, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna look at future learning and development that we can bring to the table on that. Have a couple of experts, if I can bring somebody from TV production side as a speaker or something like that, to sort of talk about how you manage these environments, and look that forward. So guys, thanks ever so much for joining me today. Great discussion as always. Look forward to chats next week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Great to see everyone. Take care.